What up, everybody? We're going to do another knife review, and we're going to try to get my video count up. Try to do one of these reviews a day, maybe every other day, and we're going to do some videos. We're going to talk about knives and the knife community and whatnot. But today, as I said, we're going to do a review, and I'm going to give a little background on this, and I think this will strike a chord with a lot of knife enthusiasts. I am 47 years old, and my formative years really were the late 70s and the 80s. That's where I really formed the interests that I have in life that were strong enough to carry with me up through almost midlife. And one of those things was martial arts movies. Okay, if you love kung fu and karate movies, the 80s were a great decade for that. You had a lot of American-made martial arts movies and the beginning of a huge influx of Asian-made martial arts movies. So, in a sense, we were inundated with this stuff. And it was fantastic. If you go back and look at any of those movies, they are so damn corny, but they were so cool at the time, and they influenced a lot of us. The knife that we're going to talk about today is part of that influence on me. And it, like I say, it still sticks with me to this day. All right, what we're going to talk about is the CRKT Otanashi Noh Ken. All right, this is a Japanese-inspired folder. It's designed by James Williams, who most of us are very familiar with. Mr. Williams is one of those guys that is on the inside. He's considered one of those real deal guys, and now he specializes in teaching law enforcement and military personnel. In that sense, he is a part of the very small group of people that are seriously considered to be the real deal in this. So if you are interested in anything like that, look up Mr. Williams. 50 years experience in martial arts this guy has, and much respect to him. And what we have in front of us is a large, long, narrow, folding tanto. Okay, this blade configuration is referred to as Osaraku Zukuri. And I'm not going to get into the history of it. You can look it up. It's pretty phonetic the way it's spelled. And it dates back to the 15th century, the 1400s. And basically what it is typically in a tanto, we consider our flat grind here to be the primary edge, and then the tip to be the secondary edge. In Osaraku Zukuri configuration, that secondary, the tip edge, takes up more than half of the blade length, and as you can see in this instance, as designed by Mr. Williams, it takes up about 2/3 of the blade length. That gives us a very, very, very acute point, and if you look at that, that point is needle sharp. All right, that's going to make it delicate, but it is needle sharp and fairly thin. And if you want a stabby knife, buddy, you're not going to get any better than this blade configuration, not even in a double-edged dagger. Now, that said, let's set this down and look at it just overall while I go over some specifications for it. Like I say, this is a large knife. It is large in the sense of its length. It is a narrow overall profile, and it carries very well in the pocket. All right, the blade length on this is 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters. The blade stock thickness, I got 159 thousandths of an inch or 4 millimeters. The blade width, the width of the blade from the edge to the spine is 930 thousandths, so a little over 9/10 of an inch and 23 millimeters. The handle length, 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. The handle thickness is 430 thousandths of an inch, less than half an inch, or 11 millimeters. The handle width, now I measured at the widest point, which is the butt, so everything else is inclusive in that. The handle width is 1.3 inches or 33.5 millimeters. The overall length is 10 inches or 25.5 centimeters. And the weight is, for a 10-inch knife, a pretty light 6.42 ounces or 182 grams. All right, 6.42 ounces seems like a lot, but you are looking at a knife that has a 4.5-inch blade. Okay, 4.5 inches and a 10-inch overall length. This knife, you can reach out and touch somebody with it. Okay, it is bigger than the majority of people will ever carry, even knife enthusiasts. So if you ever have to use this knife in its intended purpose, which is a weapon, okay, a defensive or offensive weapon, then you are going to have superior reach over most people. In fact, you're going to have superior reach over most people that carry a fixed blade on their body. They typically will not carry a 10-inch fixed blade. All right? So in that sense, you are very, very good. Now, let's pick this thing up and take a look at it. It is beautiful in its simplicity. It is a folder. It's a frame lock folder. Columbia River does a fantastic job, and what Columbia River gives us is these custom designs made overseas, production, with cheaper materials. I'm going to say cheaper, and that's compared to the more expensive materials. Not to say that this knife is cheap. It is not. It has G10 front scale, and it is moderately coarse. It's like the finer coarseness that Cold Steel uses and the coarser stuff like Spyderco uses. It's very comfortable. It's grippy. It is not rough. All right, like I say, it's a frame lock, a stainless steel frame. It does have the lock system, the LAWKS, which is the Lake and Walker knife lock. That was designed by Ron Lake and Michael Walker years ago. Columbia River has licensed it and used it for, God, I don't even know how long. I've known about it for close to 20 years. So they have used this on a lot of their knives. And basically what it is, you can see here, it's an what I call an interference lock. And it's basically a disc. It pivots around and it interferes with the liner lock or frame lock being disengaged when it's rotated around. You rotate it back around, you can disengage the lock. So that's what I consider an interference lock. And it's pretty intuitive if you use a knife in a forward grip, because you're going to grip it with your thumb in that sweet spot anyway. Now I will say in this instance on the Otanashi Noh Ken that the activator for this little stud right here, it's a little round stud, is set a little low in this recess. And in the off position, sometimes it's hard to get your thumb in there to it. I wish it was raised up just a tiny bit. If it was a millimeter or a millimeter and a half higher up, it would be easier to access. But still, this secondary lock is very intuitive. And I've always liked it. A lot of people boo-hoo it, but you don't have to use it. This is a pretty sturdy frame lock. I don't have any issues with the lockup on it, but under hard use, this is, an added comfort to keep that frame lock from disengaging. Now, is this going to make it strong enough to take it out and abuse it, baton it through a tree, or chop through a car door or whatever? I don't know about that. I've never done that with a folding knife and never will, because I use fixed blades for that. But that's an argument for another day. But I will say that the Lock's lock is it's pretty decent. Let's see here. It is a stainless frame lock. The lockup is solid. There is no play in any direction on mine. The lockup is, everything is very dark, about 50% on mine, and closed. The centering is very good. Now I will say this knife, and you'll find this on a lot of lower end knives, is very sensitive to how you have the pivot tightened. There is a fine balance between having that blade centered and ease of deployment. So I recommend on most knives like this, once you find that, you Loctite that pivot and keep it in that sweet spot. If not, you'll always be tweaking on it after you use it, because use may cause that lock or that pivot to loosen a little bit. So just like in all lower end knives, this is it's sort of a balancing act. And it is on no washers. It is, let's see if you can see down in there, and you cannot. I believe, let me look here, that this is phosphor bronze on one side and Zytel on the other, but it may be Zytel on both sides. I can't see that, so I'll have to research that. You know what? It's a long knife. It's thin. You see that when I close it, the blade is fully nested. It is fully nested in that handle. It is a slim profile. The widest width you have is at the pivot end and the butt end, and it narrows in the center. It's basically a rectangular profile that is concaved, and it is very thin. You know, at 430 thousandths, you're well under, you're a tenth of an inch under a half an inch. That's very thin. It has this deep carry pocket clip, which is a fantastic design. I'm going to tell you right now, you know it's there, but there is no sensation of discomfort or anything from that pocket clip. It is very deep carry, as deep as you can get. The tension is perfect on it. It's nice and springy, and I've not had any problems with that at all. I believe that it is reversible, although if you do reverse it to the G10 side, keep in mind it's going to be grippier on your pocket because the G10 is textured, unlike the stainless on the other side. All right, speaking of that, how's the grip in the hand? Is it secure? I would say that it's pretty secure. It's a rectangular handle. It is very neutral. It is good for a forward grip. Your reverse grip is good. Transitioning between grips is very easy and very quick. I don't have any problems with it slipping. That said, I typically prefer knives with a little deeper choil here, but I'm very happy that this has a choil, because you would typically not see that in a Japanese-inspired handle. So I think that is a good addition to this design. As far as opening it goes, you see that the show side scale, the G10 scale, is dished out here to give good access to that ledge style. It's a disc style opener, and some people don't like those. They prefer thumb studs or thumb holes or you know, whatever. But I'm pretty neutral about that. I typically can access all of those opening styles pretty easily, and typically open with a sort of a flipping, the way you would shoot marbles with that type of action. So I get a good opening action. The blade profile is very interesting. Like I said, the Osaruku Zukuri blade style is over 50% of the forward primary bevel is over 50% of the blade length, and in this instance it's probably 2/3. It is very narrow, very thin, very stabby. That said, it does not have a very high grind, and this is a 4mm thick blade stock. So this is not a slicer. Now this knife has been resharpened to the factory edge profile, but up to 1200 grit, and then lightly stropped The tip is the sharpest tip I've ever felt on a knife, and it cuts very well. But since that is a narrow primary grind, and because of the thickness of this, that edge thickness it's fairly thick. It's not going to be a slicer dicer. It is what it's designed to be, and that is a stabby knife. Now, what can you do with this stabby knife with a 4.5 inch blade? Well, you can stab things with it. All right, I'm not going to apologize for what this knife is. I didn't design it, and I don't think Mr. Williams is going to apologize, and neither is CRKT. This knife was designed as a defensive offensive folder. It is designed to be stabby. It is designed to get somebody off of you. It is designed to defend yourself in an emergency under duress. And it would excel at that. A 4.5 inch blade is plenty long enough to get into a human body to vital areas. All right, you start sticking this knife into somebody, and they're going to think to themselves, hey, I need to leave this person alone. And there it has fulfilled its intended purpose. Overall, the fit and finish on mine is very high. The G10 is finished well. The blade finish is it feels like a baked on finish, like a Teflon finish. I don't think that it would stand up to a lot of extended hard use, but as I said, it's not really a slicer. When I carry this knife, it is solely for its intended purpose as a defensive knife. I do not use it for utilitarian purposes, and never will. I'll carry a second knife just for that. This knife is a good companion to carry with a firearm, although I typically recommend a fixed blade to carry with a firearm because you don't have to worry about opening that knife under duress. The fit and finish, like I say, is good. No issues with the front scale G10. No issues with the blade finish, hardware finish, the back scale finish. The grinds on the blade are even. You can see you've got a long, narrow swedge on the back side of the blade. And it narrows it down a little bit. It's not a lot. It's a pretty shallow grind. But with that blade shape, you're not going to need a lot to make it efficient for stabbing. Yeah, overall, the fit and finish is good. Like I say, the lockup is solid. The centering is good on it. The action is smooth. Not really any issues with that. These knives typically sell for under $100. And I think you're getting a lot of knife for that. Now, the blade steel is AUS 8. I'm not the biggest fan of AUS 8. It's not what I would consider a cheap steel. It is a solid mid-range steel. It's easy to sharpen. It will not have incredible edge retention. It just will not. But it's very good as far as corrosion resistance. And when you do need to resharpen it, it is easy to resharpen. And like I say, I'll be carrying this in a defensive role, and pray to God I never have to use it, so I'll never have to resharpen it again. And that's all good and fine. So if you're looking for a long, slender, easy to carry defensive knife, if you live in an area, a state or local municipality that allows a 4.5 inch blade length carry, you put this down in your pocket, and with that deep carry pocket clip, it disappears. It's so narrow that you do not have to worry about it taking up too much pocket space. You can get your hand down in your pocket and everything is good. Now, that said, it is, it's over 5 inches long, 5.5 inches long. So if you have very shallow pockets, then it may not actually fit down the length of your pocket. Keep that in mind. But just like everything that Columbia River offers, this knife is a solid value. It gives you the benefit of a custom design with the low cost of Asian production. They're made in Taiwan. The quality is good for that price range, and as I typically find in Columbia River, I think that their quality ranges from good to excellent for their price points. And I've never had an issue out of, I don't even know how many Columbia River knives I've owned, 20 of them over like the last 2 decades. So, I can recommend Columbia River, and I can recommend this knife if you're looking for a long, narrow, stabby folder. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to keep this one short, try to keep it about 20 minutes here. And I'm going to thank you once again for taking the time to view one of my videos. I'll ask that you like and subscribe. Tell your friends about me. I always have something to say about something. And I think that everybody should hear. And you guys have a blessed day. All right, bye.